Okay, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about Poryscript more. We're going to be talking about some of the syntax, and we're going to go over our part one of creating our new starter selection with up to 9 or even higher options of starter Pokemon. So if you haven't watched our Pori map warps, we ended that video by having a completely new Professor Birch's house just to play around with, so I suggest watching that if you haven't. But we're going to create our little table here just by dragging at the bottom of this tile set and adding this table, and we are going to create scripts, and we're going to put Pokeballs on top of this table. When you want to interact with a script in the world, when you want to, write a character on the screen, like if we wanted to add Professor Birch here and you want to talk to him, you have to create an event for our Pokeball that we're going to use, that we're going to have 3 Pokeballs on top of here. We're just going to start with the first one, but we just need an object. Now this object can be anything if we wanted it to be, but obviously we want it to be a Pokeball, so we are going to change its sprite to be Item Ball, because that is the sprite for the Pokeball. So now we're going to have a Pokeball here, but we don't have any scripts, we don't have any flags, we don't have anything for it. So we're going to have to create it. If we compiled and load the game up right now and we walked up and we pressed A, no script would run. But normally when we create an object and we assign a script, that's what happens, and that's how we call our scripts from the overworld. You saw in the last Poryscript video we did that with just the basic sign, but there are lots of different events that we can use that are that have different effects. This one being the object we can call from our script. So we are now going to go create our script for it. I have already written one just because I figured it would be easier for the video instead of slowly typing it all out. So we are going to talk about the Poryscript syntax and how we would go about giving a Pokemon using this Pokeball. So let's get into it. Here is our script. I'm going to minimize that. So to start out with, at the very top, every script that you have for a map needs to have a map script defined. It can be completely empty like this one is. In our part 2 of our starter series, we'll actually define a map script, but here we are going to have it completely empty because we don't need a map script. A map script runs when in a bunch of different conditions. It can run when we first load into a map. You can set a script to run when you first walk in. You can set a script to run when you back out of your start menus, or you go into your bag and then you exit out. You can have a script that runs every single time you do that. Those are what we can do with map scripts. You assign a script to run, and it can be any script that you write. You can assign it to run at a certain time, depending on the map script type that you use. Just so that you're aware where we are creating this script, where I created this script, this is inside of data, layout, maps, and then you go to your map. In this case, I named my new professor. That was the map that we created last time, and PoriMap will create this folder for you. And we just right click and we hit new file, we name it scripts.pori, and then we can start writing our scripts. As long as you added the Poryscript into your tools and to your make file like we talked about in the last video, this will compile into a scripts.inc that the game will then read, and we'll be able to interact with those scripts when we're in the game. So now that we have gone over that, we are going to begin talking about our script. To declare a script, you use the script keyword and then the name of the script. You can technically name it whatever you want, but we have some conventions just to keep things organized. You're going to want to start out with the name of the map, and then event script, if it is an event script, and then the name of whatever you're doing. We have 1 Pokeball, so we're just going to have it labeled Pokeball, but when we have more than 1 Pokeball, obviously we're not going to want it to be just Pokeball. But anyway, so when we first interact with this script, when we walk up to the Pokeball and we click on it, we want it to lock. We don't want to be able to move around. We don't want to be able to walk while everything's going on. We want it to freeze the player. So we write lock all. This is a macro that there are all of these yellow commands here. They're macros. If they have arguments, we encapsulate the arguments with parentheses. But these macros do specific things. They expand out into code that this message box. It'll put a message box on the screen, like we saw in the first Pori map with the sign. It put that sign, hello world, on the screen. So this lock all just locks everything. Now, if you want to see what these macros are, we actually have a file. You have it in your system. If you go into the pokeemerald folder, it's in ASM macros event.inc. And in this, we have a whole list of all of these macros, and it shows you what their arguments are. And we can search for specific macros. So an important one for this video is going to be givemon. So this is the givemon macro, and it defines how it works. We call givemon, we give it a species, we give it a level, and we give it an item. And then it will return into variable result, which we'll talk about. It'll set it to mon given to party, mon given to PC, or mon can't give, depending on whether or not we have room in our party, we don't have room in our party, so it goes to the PC, or it just can't give it to us for some reason, so it returns an error. And we'll be able to access that variable to see the result, which we'll talk about in a second. So to start with, we lock everything. Now, when we click on the Pokeball, we want to see a picture of the Pokemon that's in it. So this macro is as simple as that. It's just show mon pick, and then the arguments are species, and then these are the position that we want it to appear on the screen. So you can mess around with these a little bit if you want it to change the coordinates, but 10 and 3 seem to work fine for the show mon picks, so we're going to keep them at 10 and 3. The next part is message box. So this is going to actually, when we click on the Pokeball, it's going to pop up with a picture of Mudkip, and then it's going to pop up with a message box that's going to say, do you want to choose Mudkip? And then this is a specific message box type. It is message box yes, no. So it's going to ask us yes or no, and then it's going to give us the answer as a variable that we can access. So we can go into events.inc, and we can go to message box, and there are a couple references. So here, message box, then the arguments are the text and the type. We have message box NPC, message box sign, message box default, message box yes, no, auto close, get points, pokenav, and these all are slightly different, but they, at the end of the day, do the same things. They display messages. So the message box yes, no is a very useful one because it allows us to give input in our game into our scripts directly. So we use the message box yes, no. Then, as we see, it well, maybe it doesn't say it directly, but it puts the output of the yes, no into this var result variable. And this is a very important variable. A lot of these macros do that. They put the result in this var result variable. And that allows us to access the data from the macros. So we're going to start by talking about the variables. If you want to see a list of the variables or create your own variables, the vars.h header file is the place to do it. To find it, it is in include constants, and then scroll down to vars.h. There's another one in here you might want to also open at the same time, flags.h, that we will also talk about, which are very important and very similar. So the vars, these are all of the variables that all of the scripts in the entire game use. We start out with some temporary ones. These ones refresh every time a map is loaded, they're cleared, and then we get into some more important variables that our game uses that we can see. Like you start reading these, var startermon, this is a variable that holds what starter you choose at the beginning of the game in Vanilla Emerald, which changes a lot of different things in the game, like your rival's team is dependent on that variable. So we can use any of these unused vars for any of our code that we want. So we can just take them, we can just copy them and paste them into our script, and we can use this var and we can store values in it. We can compare values with the variable. We can do a lot with the variables. The flags.h is the same thing, but with flags, whereas the variables can hold, they're basically integers that can hold values from 0 to I believe 65,000-ish, because they're 2-bit or 2-byte variables, so they can hold 2 to the 16th. So the flags, though, they are only just off and on. They're just on or off. We can use the flags. They're very important in Porymap because the events we give them a flag, and when the flag is off, they show, but when the flag is on, they don't show anymore. So if we wanted to be able to pick up this Pokeball, we wouldn't want it to load back in the next time we came into the map. So we have to set its flag, we have to give it a flag and set it so that it goes away. So let's actually do that. We are going to give it a flag. Let's do this one, and I'm actually going to have to change the flag in my code because I used a different flag. So here, now it has a flag, so when we set this flag in Poryscript, this will not load back in. It won't disappear right away. We have to make it disappear in our script. But if we made it disappear, it would load back in if we didn't set the flag. So we have flags and we have variables. Flags are ons and offs. Variables are integer values. They can theoretically hold other things, since integers can be they're just binary. They can be converted into other variable types. But these variables are very important to the control flow of our Poryscript, of our Poryscript files. So we have this message box that is a yes or no message box, and then we are taking the variable var result that comes from this yes or no, and we are comparing it to this yes. If this is true, then we are going to do all of this code inside of this if statement. If it's not true, we're going to do this code down here. And then either way, at the end, we're going to do these things before the script is over. So when we want to access what's inside of a variable, say for a comparison, we have to run the var function, which pulls out the value of the variable, so that we can actually compare it with yes. You can also, I believe yes is also equal to 1, so we could also put 1 there, and if you wanted it to be equal to no, you could do that. If you want it to be not equal to no, you could do that. You can, change this conditional, and inside of Poryscript, these overall conditionals in general inside of these ifs in a lot of the similar ways that you can with C. So we have the majority of our conditional operators are available to us. So we can use ands and ors, which we'll use them in the part 2. So if we choose yes, then we are going to give the Pokemon we're going to give the Mudkip. I just have it set to level 50, it doesn't really matter. And I have it set to give a Master Ball just because I feel like it. But you can have it set to nothing if you want. You obviously have to have a level if you want it to be level 5. So as we saw in here, our give mon, it returns the mon given the party, mon given the PC, mon can't give. We can use in our comparison, we can use just 0, 1, and 2. We can actually look up if we if we type this into our search bar, we can find the file that actually defines what these constants are, but we can just use them directly inside of Poryscript, and Poryscript will recognize it. So we can just put mon given the party here, and then, you know, we call our var result, because this is a different, it's different now, because this macro gave it a yes value, gave it the value 1, but now we're running a different macro and it's assigning inside of the variable. So it overwrote this yes and it gave it a new value that is dependent on the result of givemon, whether it went into our party, whether it went into our PC, or whether we failed to, you know, get the Pokemon. And here we basically have conditionals. If we got it in our party, then run this code. Else if it went to our PC, then run this code. Else, meaning neither of those happened, it didn't go to our party, didn't go to our PC, so it must have failed, then we run this code. So that's how we, you know, we break up our conditionals in Poryscript so that we can control the flow of our program. Again, the variable has changed because of the new macro that we have used it stored a new value inside of the variable. We can set our variables ourselves if we want to. You can set var, and then we can give it our variable name, whatever our variable name is, and then we can give it a value like 40 if we wanted to. We can add var, which will add, you know, add 1 into our variable. We can subtract as well if you want to. And for flags, you can set a flag, which we actually do here, set flag, so that our Pokeball, you know, won't appear again. And you can also clear a flag if you want to clear a flag. So that's how in our code we actually interact with these variables and change them instead of just reading from them like we're doing here. We're just reading from the variable. But if you wanted to create your own variable and you wanted to change it in your code, that's how you do it. And we will talk more about that in part 2. So now we will talk about our first result. If we get it in our party, if Mudkip goes to our party, we will want to run this code. So first, we are going to run this macro. It's not really important, you can take it out if you want, but it plays the sound that you get when you obtain an item. It's as simple as that. The macro just takes one of the fanfare keys. You can find these by, you know, if you just search this up in, you know, in your Explorer, in your folder, you'll be able to see where they're all referenced and you'll find the list. So we play the sound, then we display a message box, received Mudkip, you got the Mudkip, and then we remove object 1. Now, like I said before, setting the flag does not remove it away immediately. We have to remove it separately. So this 1 here is the value here. It's the event object ID. When we have a bunch, when we have our 2 and our 3 here, we will remove object 2, remove object 3. And then we have our Professor Birch here. We won't want to remove that one. That'll be object 4. So we want to make sure we have the right event object removed when we are running our code. So we want to make sure that we have the right one. We do. It's object 1. So we remove the Pokeball. The Pokeball will disappear from the screen. Then we'll set the flag for the Pokeball. The Pokeball will not reappear. We actually changed our flag, so we want to add our new flag in. So we set our flag, and then here I call this script that I wrote down here, and this is how you call other scripts inside of your scripts. Like if you want to direct the flow of a script, you use the call macro and then the name of the script that you want to use. So this script I wrote is nickname partymon, and it is down here. So we nickname partymon, we also nickname boxmon. Is the only difference in this part of the script. And if it goes to our PC, we play the fanfare, we receive Mudkip onto the screen, we remove the Pokeball, we set the flag, and then we call a different script. We call Boxmon. Here's Partymon, and here's Boxmon. So now the main difference between these is the common event scripts that we use to name the Pokemon are different, and we will talk about those in a second. But I want to finish this main script first because it's more important. So if it goes to our party, we play the music, we send the message, we delete it, we set the flag. If it's going to the PC, we do the same thing. Otherwise, we hide Monpick. We have to hide the pick, and then we say no more room. So you couldn't put it in your party. You couldn't put it in your PC. So we hide the Monpick, because otherwise this pick will still stay on the screen because we showed it here. We have to hide it. Now, we hide it if we're like, well, we didn't hide it here and you didn't hide it here, and that's because we called this function and this function, which has hide Monpick inside of it. So it will hide the pick if we inside of these as well. And also, if this whole if statement is false, we again also have to make sure we hide it. So we hide it down here, and this is the else if we didn't choose yes to picking up a Mudkip. So if we didn't want a Mudkip, then we run this hide Monpick. So we're like, well, you don't want it, so we get rid of the picture, and then we run this message box. Now, like I was talking about up here with the message box, it takes a parameter of the text, and then it takes the type of the message box. Well, we can put text here, but sometimes we don't want to inline it like this because if our text is too long, it will get cut off, it'll format incorrectly. So sometimes we want to separate our text into text scripts, and in our text scripts, we can write multi-line scripts using new lines and other delimiters. And we'll talk about that more later, but basically to declare a text script, you just write text, the name of the text, and then you put the actual text inside of the brackets. And you can take this by just copying the name and just pasting it inside of the message box. And then we could also, do a type if we want, but message box default is fine for this, so we don't have to. Now, assuming this goes through, either you want the Mudkip and you get it, or it fails, or you don't want the Mudkip, we have to wait for the messages to end. We want to wait for them because otherwise the game will do some funky things. Then we want to release all. We locked all, so we want to release everything because if we don't, then everything will still be frozen. And then we end the program. So that is the main program. We are now going to talk about the nickname Partymon and the nickname Boxmon. I skipped over them before we covered the rest of it because of specifically the common event scripts. Before we called these scripts up here, and they're scripts that are in our files, but we can also call global scripts from other files. And we can make our scripts global as well by adding the global keyword after them, but we generally don't need to do that. But we do like to access global scripts a lot of the time because in a similar way to us using these macros, the show Monpick, the message box, the give mon, we also we use the common event scripts, the global ones, in the same way. So if we want to find our common event scripts, we can search for them in our search bar, and it's going to give us a lot of options for them because they're used quite often. But we're going to go to the PC transfer one because this has two of the ones that we use here, or three of them actually. So these common event scripts, it's called in the same way that we're calling the script here. You just call it using the call macro, and it runs the script. So this one, it gets the giftmon party slot, which basically just means it grabs the slot in your party, the number 1 through 6 in the order that your Pokemon are, where the Pokemon just went. You get a new Pokemon, it goes to slot 1, so this returns slot 1. And it returns 1. This is right here, and this is the actual code for it in the more verbose scripting language. Then we call name received partymon, which takes the value that's returned from this. It takes the slot, it needs to know the slot first, and then it runs this, and it gives you an option to name it, basically. It runs the code, so we don't have to every time script a whole new menu with support for naming. You don't have to code that every time. The game has a common event script for that, so we can just call that every time you want to name a new Pokemon. So we call this event script that allows us to name the Pokemon in our party at the given party slot that we got from here. And in the same way, now this is all in an if statement, which I skipped over because it's the same as before. It's just a message box that says give it a nickname. So when we pick up the ball, it disappears, and then it's like, do you want to nickname it? Yes or no? And then we hide the pic because we want to hide the picture. And then if yes, if the var result is yes, because it's back to yes or no now because it's no longer mon given the party or mon given the PC because we overwrote it here. So we hide the picture, we check to see if it's yes, and if it is yes, we run this. If it's not, then we don't run anything because we don't need to nickname it. So we defer, it goes back into the control here, and it keeps going down. Once we're done here, it goes back, and it keeps going down. So the nickname Boxmon is the same, except it uses two different functions from the common event scripts. The first one, it just names the received Boxmon. It doesn't need a position. It just has the last value here was saved from when it went into a PC. It saved the location, the Pokemon. So of the last Pokemon added to the PC, so we can just call this script to name it without needing the party slot. And this is the same, give it a nickname, yes or no, hide. If yes, we will name it. Otherwise, we call this function, which is just call event script transferred to PC, which will actually probably give us an error. So because I haven't talked about buffering, we are just going to put transferred to PC. So this will just say it was transferred to the PC. We can use that function if we do a little bit more, the one that I just deleted, but we are not going to for now because it's not going to work properly for us if we have a full party, if it has to take it to the PC, because we didn't buffer the species name. So now we have covered everything in our script. So we have this script that if we click on the thing that the script is given to, it will run all of this code, and it'll give us a mudkip. And what we have to do, though, to make it interactable, to actually run the script from the game, is we have to, of course, go back in the Porymap, and we have to give this event object this script. So now that the Pokeball has a script, we have to make sure to save, and then we are going to have to compile. So, navigate into your folder and run make, and you can compile your game, and we should be able to, I'm actually going to stop that, and okay, make sure it's saved before you compile. So we are going to wait, and we will let that compile. Okay, our game is compiled, so we are going to load it. We are going to go into our professor's house, and I forgot to add collision to this table. It doesn't really matter for this, but we are going to click on our Pokeball, and as you can see, we have our Mon pick. It's showing our Mon pick. We're locked. We can't move. I did not choose the Pokemon, so now that it's over, I can move. That went here. not chosen, hide Monpic. The Monpic disappeared. It waited until it was done, it released, and if I go back in, the Monpic's here. I can choose the Mudkip. Yes, I received the Mudkip. Receive Mudkip. Now, it's going to ask me to give it a nickname. I am going to choose yes. I'm just going to not really give it a nickname because it doesn't matter, and it's going to be done. I have the sound off because it's kind of annoying sometimes, especially when you're speeding it up, but it did play the sound, and it should on yours too, assuming you included the fanfare line. And the Pokeball's gone now, so we can't grab it again. We can run outside real quick and come back in, and it's not there. It's gone. It should be forever gone. It should not come back. So we are gonna wrap this video up. In our next part 2 on the series, I'm gonna go over a script much like this one, but we're just gonna expand it to include 3 different Pokeballs, and each Pokeball is going to have 3 different options. So we're going to be able to store 3 different grass starters, 3 different fire starters, and 3 different water starters inside of each Pokeball. And that's just an interesting way to get you, familiarized with working in Poryscript. It's not that important. You might not need it, but looking and reading over all of the things that we do in that video, at least looking at the code, will definitely help you understand how the control flow of Poryscript works better. So with that, we're going to wrap it up because this video is getting a little long.